Every year, right around Bishevat, Laila and her 6 brothers would always have a contest. And it was a contest to see who could find the perfect tree to represent the holiday. Some years the tree that won was the one that had the most beautiful tasting fruit. Other years the tree that won had the most beautiful leaves and branches. But whichever tree won in any given year, one thing was for sure. Laila never won. So this year, Laila was walking through the woods trying to find a winner. What she found instead was a very curious looking tree. This tree had a bunch of leaves on one side and not very many leaves on the other side and a big bald spot on top. It was crooked and bent, and the fruit was the strangest shade of purple and blue she'd ever seen. It was, in fact, the kind of purple and blue your toe turns when it's bruised after you kick the table. She looked at the tree, and the tree looked at her. And then it said, "Hi." Laila looked at the tree and said, "Hi, I'm Laila." And the tree said, "I'm Carl." And Laila said, It's very nice to meet you. I'm looking for the perfect tree to win a contest." And Carl said, "Oh, that won't be me." Just then a bird landed on one of Carl's branches, but his branches were so waxy the bird slipped right off and fell to the ground. The bird looked up and shook its wing and then flew off. Laila said to Carl, "If you don't mind my asking, what kind of tree are you?" And Carl said, "I'm a foot fruit tree." Laila said, "Excuse me?" Carl said, "Yes, a foot fruit tree. Try one of my fruit, then you'll know why I'm called that." Laila reached up. She plucked one of the fruits. She smelled it and was quite surprised. It smelled like feet. She scrunched up her nose but tried to be polite. Laila said, "Oh, Carl, it's very unique. In fact, I've never smelled a fruit like it." "Oh, I know it's terrible. All the other trees have nice smelling fruit, but not me." Laila said, "Carl, I wonder if there's something we can do with this. Maybe my mom could bake it into a pie or something. Maybe it might actually taste good." And Carl said, "Well, you're welcome to try, but don't hold your breath." So Laila took the fruit home and then came back the next day. "Well," said Carl. Laila looked at him and said, "It was terrible. She tried, but it really didn't taste very good." "I told you," said Carl. So then Laila thought, Carl, I know how to make maple syrup from a maple tree. Now, you're not a maple tree, but what if we tried something like that?" Carl said, "I doubt that will work, but you're welcome to give it a shot." So Laila set to tapping Carl's trunk. She got a little bit of sap, and it looked kind of like gray sour cream. Then she took it home and got to work. The next day she came back, and Carl had a little bit of hope in his eyes. "Well?" Laila said, "It tasted like rotten mustard." Carl said, "Oh, I knew it." Well, that night, Laila was sitting around the fire with her brothers, and they were bragging and going on about the trees that they had found. One brother said, "I found a tree with fruit so beautifully tasting that it tastes like sunshine in your mouth." And another brother said, "Well, I found a tree. Its canopy was so large and lush, it's like you're being embraced by the whole sky." Ugh. Laila rolled her eyes. And then she thought, and then she thought. And then she had the most curious idea. The next morning, Carl was, of course, standing in the forest, and he heard a strange sound. Flump, flump. Couldn't tell what it was. And then, after a moment or two, through the trees came Laila, and she was dragging a table over the rocks and roots. Flump, flump. She brought the table over and pushed it up against Carl's trunk. "What are you doing?" Laila didn't say anything. She just put her finger to her lips and wandered off again. Moments later, Carl heard voices, and there through the trees was Laila and her entire family. Laila stood in front of Carl and waved her hand like a magician and said, "Ta-da!" Her family was shocked. Then her brothers fell over laughing. One of the brothers said, "Oh, Laila, what were you thinking?" And Laila said, "Well, I was thinking that this is the perfect tree to have our Tu Bishvat Seder at." Well, the brothers fell over laughing again, and even her parents were snickering a little bit. And then her mother tried to be supportive and said, "Laila, how can that be?" Well, Laila pointed to one of her brothers and said, "You found a tree with beautiful tasting fruit. Well, guess what? I bet the bugs think so too. With this tree, the fruit doesn't taste good at all. The bugs will not bother us. They won't be crawling all over our table and in our food. We won't have to waste time brushing them away." Then she turned to another brother. She said, "And you said the canopy of your tree was so large and lush. Well, guess what? The sunshine won't be able to shine through. We'll be eating in the dark. But on this tree, over on one side, it's shaded enough that we'll be nice and cool. But over on the other side, some sunlight will still come in." Then she patted Carl's warty bark and she pointed to his branches and said, "Do you see how these branches are so waxy? Birds and squirrels can't sit on them. So if we eat our Seder underneath it, there will be no birds and squirrels over top to drop anything unexpected on our food." Then she crossed her arms and looked at her brothers and dared them to disagree with her. And you know what? When it came time to judge the contest, Laila and Carl didn't win. It was the tree with the most beautiful fruit this year. But you know what? That was okay, because her whole family did agree that Carl made the perfect spot to have their Tu Bishvat Seder at. And you know what? Between Laila and Carl, no matter what everyone else thought, they were both pretty sure that Laila had found the perfect tree. And that's the end of that story.